Welcome to Lesson 2 in Unit 17, Structure, Function, and Survival. In this lesson, students will work to answer the question, what are external structures and how do they differ among organisms? Students use cards, readings, and plastic animals to consider an organism's external structure. They figure out that external structures of plants and animals include skin, spines, fur, petals, eyes, and more. The structures vary from organism to organism, and this can help us classify living things. This lesson is approximately 4 days. In the engage portion of this lesson, students will work in small groups to individually observe a small plastic animal and note their animal's specific body structures. Ask students to turn and talk to give an example of a structure their organism has that would help the organism survive in its environment. Next, ask them to work together as a class to group their animals into categories based on these structures. In the explore portion of this lesson, students will work in groups to observe a set of bird cards as they complete their bird external structure sheet. Have students complete just the explore task where they observe the birds and write down examples of bird external structures. Students are recording how they think the external structure helps the bird survive, grow, reproduce, or behave a certain way. They will revisit this sheet during the elaborate. During the explain portion of this lesson, students will read about the external structures of different species. Teachers may choose to have students highlight or underline the specific examples of organism adaptations that come up in the reading. After students read, have them turn and talk to summarize this reading. As a class, chart key examples in plant and animal structures. Next, read the book, What Do You Do with a Tale Like This? To the class. Be sure to check the read aloud guide ahead of time because you will only read the pages about eyes and ears. The rest of the structures can be used in a later lesson. Facilitate a discussion among the class about the similarities and differences these organisms have. Guide student discussion to include that all organisms in the book have the structure of an eye or ear, and all eyes see objects in these examples. Moving on to the elaborate portion of this lesson, students will view a career connection video about a taxonomist. You may want to refer back to the book, What Do You Do with a Tale Like This? Before watching the video to remind students that scientists can use the external structures of plants and animals to classify or sort them. After viewing, students will turn and talk about why the taxonomist in the video believes taxonomy is important. Next, students will work in groups with the bird cards again from earlier in the lesson to make their own classification system for birds based on their external structures. Examples of external structures could include a bird's crest, feathers, beak, claws, and eyes. Additional information can be found in the teacher pages. At this point, there is no right or wrong answer, but the teacher should ask the students to justify their choices and think about why each bird has its own unique characteristics. Next, give students the bird dichotomous key to classify different birds based on things like beak size and shape, neck size and shape, and feather characteristics. Emphasize to students that these physical characteristics are adaptations that help these birds survive in their particular habitat. You may want to ask students to place a new bird, such as a bluebird, into the classification system they've developed. In the evaluate portion of this lesson, students will revisit the plastic animals from the engage. Give each student a plastic animal again, but make sure it is different than the one that they had observed before. Students will complete the formative assessment external structures individually. Next, ask students to come together as a class to create a new classification system for their organisms based on what they have learned about external structures. To close out this lesson, refer back to the unit's anchoring phenomenon about the news anchor reacting to a bug. Take a moment to have students reflect on their learning from Lesson 2 and how it relates to this phenomenon. Students may respond that humans have external structures like skin and eyes that allow them to survive by seeing or feeling dangerous objects. The news anchor was using his eyes to see the bug. In this lesson, students used cards, readings, and plastic animals to consider an organism's external structure. Students should have figured out that external structures of plants and animals include skin, spines, fur, petals, eyes, and much more. The structures vary from organism to organism, and this can help us classify living things. After considering external parts of an organism, students will examine internal structures of organisms. This will prepare them for Lesson 5, where they will consider how internal and external parts will work together as a system to support survival, growth, behavior, and reproduction.